And now, all of a sudden, there's a rift in the great mob rule, because the old man is losing power over the young Turks, and the young guys are coming in who are doing the dirty work. They want to keep all the stuff for themselves. So there's always going to be this kind of infighting and internecine battles going on in underworld organizations, mafia, La Cosa Nostra. There's always going to be this kind, and of course mafia is Italian. So that's what the whole story of Godfather 3, if you go and get the third in the series of Godfather, you'll see the mafia directly connected to the Vatican, in the Vatican, dealing directly with the Holy Father, dealing directly with the Pope. And it's an extraordinary story of how it's right there in your face in the movies. Francis Ford Coppola, in his third movie, Godfather 3, is telling you a lot right there in the movie, in your face. But so many people see it, and it's just entertainment. They don't make the connection. It's very obvious to me.
Well,
it's always been very obvious.
The Knights Templar, weren't they the first banking system?
Yes, they were, absolutely, and they are still the banking system today. They are still, in fact, the major bankers of the world belong to the Fraternal Order of Knights Templar, and it's a Masonic operation throughout Europe and ultimately throughout the world. This is why all banking systems, I mean, I do a whole thing, and you've probably heard it many times, a whole thing on the banking system and where the words come from. Why do you have a bank? What is investment? What does that word mean? Where does it come from? Where does it come from? And where do courts come from? You begin to see how the Vatican dominates our American court system. So if you don't like the courts, if you don't like the crooked politicians, if you're not happy with all of the heinous treason, high crimes and treason against the Republic, which is going on right now at what we call Washington, D.C., then you had better look at the concept of the Senate, Capitol Hill. You had better look on each side of the podium where the speakers in the House stand and give speeches, where you will see that the fasci is about an 8-foot high symbols on each side of the podium where the president stands to give his State of the Union message, and you will see two Roman fasci directly out of the old ancient Roman system of fascist government. Is right here in the Senate, right here in America. It's actually on the seal of the United States Senate, has two fasci, the symbol of world fascism in the United States Roman Senate. So Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman system of Mithra or Dagon, is now dominating the American system. We don't have anything happening in this country which is American. You have two political parties, and the reason why you have only two is because the eagle, the American eagle, is the same as the symbol for Rome. The Roman symbol in the ancient Roman Empire was the eagle. So we still have the Roman eagle, but eagles only have two wings, left wing and right wing. They only have two wings. This is why in America you can only have a left-wing and right-wing government, because the entire system that we are operating under in America is a Roman fascist system.
Well, you can take that symbol. You can take that.
It has totally destroyed our American republic. We're so incredibly ignorant, incredibly uninformed, and profoundly unread. We've been entertained with all of our games and alcohol and all of our entertainment, never realizing for a moment that the entire superstructure of America is a fascist Roman system under the Vatican, meeting up on Capitol Hill with the Senate. The entire superstructure of America is a very filthy and dirty system coming out of the ancient Roman Empire, and we're still today in America, both Catholic churches and Protestant churches, on our knees worshiping Dagon, the fish god, and Mithra, the old ancient sun god. And I'm telling you that as long as America is on its knees to its masters, its Roman masters, worshiping the old ancient Roman gods, and then we have the audacity to actually ask God for protection and divine guidance, it's ludicrous on the face of it. America is lost because she is crawling on her knees to her masters of Rome and have no idea in the world what's going on. Americans are not very well read. They're profoundly ignorant when it comes to law and how governments work, how banks work. I'm just amazed at how far gone this great republic has lost all of its freedoms, its dignity, its honor. It's lost everything, and our Roman masters sit in the Vatican in absolute opulence and luxury, dominating Europe, dominating the world, and in fact dominating our great republic, and the people of our country have no concept at all in what's going on at all. All we know is we are dying, we're starving, our republic is crashing, our money is corrupt, our politicians are corrupt. You're looking at the fall of the Roman Empire. And yet, the most incredible part of this is the people love it. You will never get the people to understand who their real enemy is. The American people love crawling on their knees to their masters. They love it. They cannot get enough of the Vatican, the Holy Father. When the Holy Father comes here, everybody falls all over themselves to get next to him, to touch him. So I'm just saying, we're in a mess, and because we're so profoundly ignorant.
Let's take another quick break, ladies and gentlemen. We are speaking with Jordan Maxwell. We're going to have a longer segment when we come back, and we'll get to some of your questions from the chat room. TruthFrequencyRadio.com is the website. We are speaking with Jordan Maxwell. We have a couple of questions from the chat room, Jordan, if you don't mind taking a few. The first one is...
Before we do that, I would just say, if you go to my website, jordanmaxwell.com, and go to the button at the top of the page that says What's New, and scroll down and you will see two videos that I highly suggest. One is a video, one is not. But two products I would suggest if you're really interested in this story. The two products I have that are filled with this kind of stuff. It's called The Priesthood of the Elis. The Priesthood of the Elis is a DVD which is actually 3 books, old typewritten manuscripts, but they're 3 different books written by the same man, not by me. And these 3 books I put together as to one book on a DVD called Priesthood of the Elis, in which this is a very old publication back in the 30s. And but what this guy has done, and I found it to be absolutely fascinating, is he took all of the words and terms that Rome used and the church has used during the Middle Ages, during the Dark Ages, all the Protestant church symbols and words and terms, and showed where they came from, the etymology of the words and the foundation of the concepts, showing them to be maritime admiralty concepts, the way the church was set up, how the Knights Templar set up the banking and words and terms and symbols and emblems. It's an incredible array of knowledge on the world of the occult in world religion. It's called Priesthood of the Elis. It's on my website. And beneath it is a second video I did called Dawn of a New Day. I don't know if you've seen it yourself, Dawn of a New Day, but
yes.
It's explaining in detail the kind of thing I'm talking about in relation to how the Roman system dominates the earth today. And of course, at the very first thing you will see on that What's New page is the hidden dimension in world affairs, and you can see it's about the Vatican. So I have a lot of material that you can get right now that's documented stuff, especially that Priesthood of the Elis, 3 books, typewritten manuscripts on the very subject we're talking about now.
And you've released all of your research files, correct?
Yes, I have. That was on one computer. I have 6 computers with incredible amount of material on all of them. This was one of the research files I have, which has like 3.4 gigabytes, 161 folders, 5,080 items. That's just one folder, but and I've got more coming. But this is over 5,000 documents and materials, research materials. So on the What's New on my website, jordanmaxwell.com, a lot of stuff dealing directly with what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and support Jordan, ladies and gentlemen, because when you do this kind of thing, you don't get rich, you go broke, and you go broke very fast. And
No doubt about it.
he's dedicated his life to bring you all of this knowledge. So pick up a couple of DVDs. Not only are they a good watch, but you're supporting a very, very talented researcher. Jordan, you mentioned the Knights Templar again, and I want to go back to that because I'm trying to understand this. There was a split, like we were talking earlier. Friday the 13th, the Vatican ordered all of the Knights Templar dead. The Knights Templar were the first banking system. How did the two groups come back together?
Well, I think, that's the way, again, that's the way organized crime operates, They have blood feuds as to who's going to run the organization when the big man dies, like in the time of Al Capone. And so there's a lot of blood feuds on the street to see who's going to run the mob now that the boss is gone. But once everything is settled down, it's business as usual, just like the mafia said, and there's nothing personal in any of this. It's just business. And so ultimately it's just business. Sometimes you'll have to end up realizing that your opponent that used to be your friend, that used to work for you, is now himself very powerful. And so now it just requires that you work, do what you have to do and grit your teeth and deal with somebody who is now your opponent in the world of business. So the Vatican has always operated behind the scenes of the world politically and monetarily, but especially politically, because religion is a very big tool, as you well know. There's wars going on today in the Middle East based on religion, based on theology, and this is where the real trick is. Once you understand the basis for theology and religion, and where these religious movements have come from, and how they're being used by the secret societies promoting these different religious movements, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Those people, those three religions are called people of the book. The reason why is because all three of those religions rely on a book, unlike Hinduism and Buddhism and other philosophies of the East, more philosophical and spiritual in their orientation. But the three religions of the West, so to speak, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, rely on a book. So they're called the people of the book. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just what I've looked at for 50 years. I don't believe for a minute that even Muhammad existed. I don't think Muhammad ever existed. I think that was a story that was dreamt up by the Jesuits and perhaps even a more secret society behind the Jesuits before they were incorporated. I think the Vatican is ultimately responsible for what we call today Islam. I think it was a Roman development for and given to the Arabic peoples. And we know that the Catholic Church and Vatican has been heavily involved in the affairs of the Middle East and the Arabic nations behind the scenes with the Knights Templars, because that's what they were doing there with the Crusades. So I don't believe Jesus existed. But I'm not in any way saying that the New Testament is not important. It is a very important book. It's telling you some extraordinarily important things about life, but it's encoded. You have to understand how to read the symbols. And once you do begin to see the encoded story in the New Testament, it begins to make a lot of sense. All the stories begin to make sense, because there's so much in the New Testament story of Jesus that absolutely defies imagination. I mean, why does Judas go out and kiss Jesus? Why is one man going out to kiss another? And the Christians will tell you, well, that's why Judas went out to kiss Jesus, to identify him so he could be arrested. That's not what the Scripture says at all. It doesn't say that. It says Judas went out to betray Jesus, to kiss Jesus, to betray him, not to identify him. And that goes back to a very ancient story of betrayal by the scorpion, which is Scorpio. The constellation of Scorpio is the backbiter. In his third movie, Godfather 3, is telling you a lot right there in the movie, in your face. But So many people see it, and it's just entertainment. They don't make the connection. It's very obvious to me.
Well,
it's always been very obvious.
The Knights Templar, weren't they the first banking system?
Yes, they were, absolutely, and they are still the banking system today. They are still, in fact, the major bankers of the world belong to the fraternal order, and of course, mafia is Italian. So that's what the whole story of Godfather 3. If you go and get the third in the series of Godfather, you'll see the mafia directly connected to the Vatican in the Vatican, dealing directly with the Holy Father, dealing directly with the Pope. And it's an extraordinary story of how it's right there in your face in the movies. Francis Ford Coppola. And now all of a sudden there's a rift in the great mob rule, because the old man is losing power over the young Turks, and the young guys are coming in who are doing the dirty work. They want to keep all the stuff for themselves. So there's always going to be this kind of infighting and internecine battles going on in underworld organizations, mafia, La Cosa Nostra. There's always going to be this kind of Knights Templar. And it's a Masonic operation throughout Europe and ultimately throughout the world. This is why all banking systems, I mean, I do a whole thing, and you've probably heard it many times, a whole thing on the banking system and where the words come from. Why do you have a bank? What is investment? What does that word mean? Where does it come from? Where did it come from? And where do courts come from? You begin to see how the Vatican dominates our American court system. So if you don't like the courts, if you don't like the crooked politicians, if you're not happy with all of the heinous treason, high crimes and treason against the Republic, which is going on right now at what we call Washington, D.C., then you had better look at the concept of the Senate, Capitol